What up, everybody? Okay, so, I apologize for not having released any videos for a little while. It's not for lack of trying, trust me. I feel like bloody cursed. I decided that I wanted to up my game or whatever, just evolve the Pokemon or whatever that is my YouTube channel into something a little less impromptu than, my videos tend to be, which is like most of my videos, as I'm sure most of you have seen them will agree, it's me turning on the camera and just talking with a very vague idea in mind of what sort of things to cover, and typically because of my ADD and my tendency to tangent, that usually doesn't happen, but I think it makes for interesting dialogue anyways. It's, that's in the eye of the beholder. If you find it interesting, sweet. If you don't, you don't have to watch me. Now, out of respect and with great restraint, I have not punched down at Adam for a number of reasons. I do believe he has put misinformation out there. I do believe he has basically broadcast himself destroying his life and his family's life on YouTube, and it's very weird. He's like almost like addicted to the persona that he portrays online, and I didn't do any of that because I didn't want to look like a clout chaser, because I'm really just a murmur, in contrast to the sea of howling sycophantic fans that basically create this echo chamber in his comment sections where whatever he does that may get the ire of like one or two people, usually videos that have me seriously shaking my head and wanting to reach for the screen and just go, dude, come on. Now I'm gonna say right now that I just didn't do a lot of that because I know what it was like to be an addict in denial, and it's just let me put it this way. It's one of those things that a video from little old me ain't gonna change. Okay? If anything, memory serves when I was, hardcore fucking IV addict, didn't matter what anyone said. I was still gonna conjure up some adjudicating circumstances to use heroin. And when I say heroin, I mean heroin, not fentanyl. Now, the reason I'm making a video, I've made casual criticisms in passing in videos that, the titles typically, I think the descriptions may mention him, but those are very few and far between, and as people who I've met through this channel will attest, in private conversation, I've really lambasted the dude, but, again, I just don't want to kick a fellow while he's down. But with that being said, this guy who lives in my city, which is historically ravaged by opioids, opioids, then opioids, I guess, me being a part of that for a long time, I basically stopped doing heroin when it became non-existent, and fentanyl was all that there was. Last time I did heroin, it was like shitty Afghani stuff that if you wanted to shoot it up, you need to mix it with like vinegar or some shit, and I was like, nah, fuck that, and I just snorted it, and it didn't do anything to me because I was on methadone, and it was also just shit. That was a long time ago. I'm more clean these days than I've ever been. My doctor actually trusts me for once. I've given clean samples for longer than ever, and he actually tests to make sure I'm not taking additional benzos on top of my taper, which I think would be a very bad idea. I think that'd very much complicate the taper. And because of the anhedonia I experience, basically the inability to feel pleasure, which I've had for 3 weeks straight now, I've stopped doing DMT and shit like that, because I would find myself spacing out in hyperspace, spacing out in a sense of like just kind of like almost like you're bored and daydreaming in school, and then it's like, wait a second, vortexes are opening around me and entities are like beckoning to me, and like I don't want to waste this fucking lovely chonga I made fucking when I can't fully immerse myself in it. So I just smoke a fuckload of weed. You know, it's way too expensive to do fucking ketamine these days, and it's way too hard on your bladder. And like I was getting up to have to piss like several times a night after a while, so I just thought, fuck it, chuck it. I mean, admittedly I smoke an unhealthy amount of cigarettes, but as a lot of people who have been to AA or NA meetings, and this was also apparently common with Synanon, but Synanon is before my time, fucking hauling on those smokes, one after another, fucking kicking back, cup of coffee after cup of coffee, which by the way, I don't immerse in coffee. With that being said, on paper, I am no more or less accredited to help people in terms of input when it comes to dealing with addiction to physically addictive drugs than Adam is. But I think empirically I'm more experience-based in terms of this. And he lives in the same city as me. I'll show you at the risk of getting a copyright strike, which is fine by me because I think this is important. I feel like I have to say something because he put some very dangerous misinformation out there that could lead to overdoses. Yeah, so like he shows a couple areas downtown, right by the block we call it, and he's just like, this place, and I think he has this illusion that because I think he has this like misconception that, I mean, he's got many misconceptions in this video, which I'll get to, but this one's important to keep in mind throughout. He seems to think Kratom is an opioid because it has mild affinity for the opioid receptors, and here's the difference between an opiate and an opioid. It's very fucking simple. Opiate is something that is harvested from the poppy. So that would be codeine, that would be morphine. Heroin is like, it's kind of a middle ground, but it's still considered an opiate because you don't need a lab to create it. But it's essentially a conversion of morphine to make it much stronger and much cleaner, because I remember shooting heroin compared to shooting morphine. Shooting morphine, it was like painful, like pins and needles, like jabbing into you, fucking up your arm and through your body, like it, yeah. Opioids, synthetic, made in labs. Very common one these days, hydromorphone. Hydromorphone, or Dilaudid, is essentially like a synthetic form of morphine, but 10 times more powerful. A little more than 10 times, and without the side effects like pins and needles and stuff like that. So there's your difference, synthetic versus organic. And Kratom isn't from the poppy, so it's not an opiate. Simple as that, those classifications. Anyways, let's get into this. He gives some really bad advice in my opinion. And keep in mind, I was addicted mostly to methadone. I've been on methadone since I was 16, but there were times where I went on heroin binges for long enough to get like physically addicted to that, and then it took a while to like get acclimatized to methadone again. With Suboxone, it's a lot more tricky, and this will come up. Suboxone, the only times I've deliberately used fentanyl, and fentanyl's killed me twice, like physically dead twice. Both times I thought I was doing something other than what I bought, which is why you should always test your shit. And in our city, we have a spectrometer place, which is like the gold fucking standard for testing your drugs. So he should really be advocating that if one of these are in your city, you should go there, because it's better than just a reagent kit. Like these things are ridiculously specific, and in a good way, in a very good way. But I mean, I think he's got like a deal with these reagent kits, And I will say that I think this is well intentioned, but his attitude of, oh, now I guess I'm an opioid addict because Kratom works on opioid receptors, and it's like, yeah, all opiates and opioids work on the opioid receptors. You could easily make the argument in the same vein, using that logic, that endorphins are making you opioid addicts because they work on your opioid receptors. Because guess what? Your opioid receptors are your pain receptors. This is why you feel no pain when you're on them. But let's get to it.
The opposite. I am making this to help educate and keep people safe so they know what to do to help them out of a debilitating, life-threatening addiction.
Get around the
Hello
algorithm.
to all of you
So
lovely
his videos can be
humans who
monetized
hopefully aren't
and
overdosing on
sponsored.
fentanyl right now. That was a bad joke.
Okay, that joke I gotta say, that makes me seethe a little bit. Hopefully you're not overdosing on fentanyl right now. As someone who's been dead twice from it, once I thought it was heroin. The second time I thought it was Xanax. I think Xanax was in it, but fentanyl was too. And knowing a lot of people who have died from it, that stings. But at the same time, the joke's a joke. I'm not gonna fucking take it to heart, but moving on.
In today's video, we're going to touch on something that we haven't talked about before, and that is what you can do when you are a hardcore heroin/fentanyl addict to help.
Okay, so for one, heroin, and I'm going to talk from the perspective of my city, as he kind of is doing, but if you knew anything about the actual opioid crisis in this city, you would know fucking heroin is damn near impossible to get. As I said before, there was a dude who popped up a mobile drug shop like a week ago, and he got arrested after like 2 days, despite everything like heroin, like all the powdered drugs being decriminalized up to 2.5 grams per person in my city, 2.5 grams per person per drug. So like this dude could have had a system that would have worked, but he says he was just making a statement. I think that could just be a legal tactic, but I don't know. It's too early to tell, but yeah. He also makes a very strange statement soon. But before he gets into that, I want to cover this right now because this is a very common mistake people make, and it's totally understandable. Fentanyl today on the streets, if you're getting a street drug, unless you're like buying the legit like fentanyl patches, which are very rarely fucking given out, and plus addicts probably wouldn't want them anyways. I remember before fentanyl was a street drug, it's had a history of being put in stuff since the 70s, but before it was like a commonly used street drug, before it replaced all the other heroin type stuff out there. It was like, I remember addicts taking gel patches and they would cut them and squeeze out the gel and smoke it off foil. But fentanyl today, it's not fentanyl, it's fentanyl analogs, which are typically more dangerous. It's fentanyl analogs combined with typically a thiobenzodiazepine, which is basically a tweaked version of triazolam. Halcyon is the brand name. It's a very old school benzo, very strong one. I've tried it like twice back in my addiction days of bouncing from heroin benzos. I never used both at the same time because that's like a recipe for an overdose, which makes the whole them putting this in with fentanyl analogs scary as fuck. And also makes what he's going to suggest people do seem much more dangerous. So I just want you people to know that these analogs are usually made, or not, they're not synthesized, but they buy them from China. They mix them with atizolam in their own fucking rooms and like government housing and stuff. I knew people who did this. That's commonly, most of it comes from like meth these days, made by the addicts. They just do the whole shake and bake thing in the bottle with the battery strips and everything. It's just bleh. But yeah, continue.
help yourself get over it, or someone who's withdrawing from oxy, methadone, any of the opioids that you can think of, there.
Okay. Those are two very bad drugs to lump beside each other. Methadone, let me give you some perspective. Methadone has such a long half-life that the acute, meaning like the hardcore withdrawals, take 30 days to get over cold turkey. To switch to Suboxone for the first time, I went cold turkey from 100 and it's either 140 or 170. It was a lot of fucking methadone for 5 days. It took about 12 hours for the withdrawals to start kicking in, but like, goddamn, I was in a fetal position for a long time, up until they started giving me the Suboxone for the first time in my life. Yeah, Suboxone is a bit of a Pandora's box in itself. But oxys, okay, a couple things from the perspective of our city. Canada has made oxys unabusable for a long time. This has changed the narrative in Canada for the opioid epidemic quite a bit from the States. I think this is just important to note because it kind of expedited things for us. And as I said, we historically in this city have like drug or opiate use going back to the hippie burnouts from the Summer of Love, coming down to Vancouver because this is where the heroin would come in because we're a coastal city. It goes even farther back than that when like dudes were trafficking underage prostitutes that actually just tore down a statue of a guy in a historic area in our city because he did just that. He was a big cowpoke type dude, but yeah, running young women, your girls like fucking children basically, and getting them addicted to opium so they couldn't just run away. So it's got a historical precedent that a lot of places don't. But as far as the opioid epidemic went, like I remember I was using oxys occasionally, and then they made oxys unusable. Like Canada was like, we see this opioid epidemic happening. If you're like this again, this was like this video, well-intentioned but catastrophic results. I'm not saying that's what this video will do, but if anyone follows the advice he does give, and if you listen, you'll hear why. This is fucking extremely dangerous advice, potentially lethal advice that he gives in some points. But anyways, Canada was like, yeah, Purdue, no more oxys unless they are unabusable. So they made Oxy Neo, and Oxy Neos are like, if they mix with water, they gel up. So in the back of my mind, I kind of knew heroin was the same thing, so I just switched to fucking heroin because my ex would use it around me all the time, and I just was kind of normalized to it. This was at a very young age, by the way. And I've been clean for a long time. I don't count the days or the years or whatever, but it's been a while. I've still got scars to remind me, but I mean, this is what it is. But
are actually things you can do to slowly taper off, or stepping stones you can use to stay safe and not die. Because
okay, I've been addicted to like all the nasty physically addictive drugs. Maybe save for alcohol, benzo withdrawal is very, very similar, and I've been through it many fucking times. And I think I, like, as I said, on paper, I'm not officiated to give, substantial opinions any more than he is, but at the same time, I do think I know more about this stuff than he does. He probably knows more about psychedelics than I do. I'm willing to make that concession, but when it comes to physically addictive drugs, I don't think he quite hits the nail on the head all that well. Despite all my experiences, I would never tell anyone to fucking just taper off on their own accord. No, consult a physician before you do fucking anything like this. Consult a physician, seriously. Okay, in our city, we have down. It's always been called down. It used to be heroin, like then it became all fentanyl and other shit. Last time I saw what it looked like someone's just crushed up pop rocks, snorted it, just fucking snot rocketed it into a bag and let it dry. Like, it was fucking nasty looking. I was like, I never want to put that in my body, but like, I've intentionally used it twice when going into precipitated withdrawal from Suboxone, which is the most painful thing any human being can experience. And one thing that about withdrawal that's weird for me is I get pretty much all the effects from opioid withdrawal. Just most of the withdrawal I've experienced has been from opioids, methadone, Suboxone. Suboxone, like the precipitated withdrawal, is gnarly. And like, this is going to be my big criticism of him because of something he says later, but has to do with the whole like tapering and substituting. Like, I wouldn't go any farther than saying consult a doctor, and once you have a taper regimen essentially outlined, because and you know what you're doing, because if you're doing down, which is tizolam and fentanyl, you could be very well addicted to benzos. I see dudes fucking on the block trying to sell their benzos that they're prescribed because they're now addicted to them. Benzo withdrawal is potentially fatal. Like, you really have to be careful with tapering. Like, a lot of these people don't even know they're doing benzos a lot of the time. It's just down. It's just whatever is in it. So, please, for the love of God, like, consult a doctor. And it's funny because like I was gonna do a video outlining, like, in my ideal world what treatment would look like, and I was gonna suggest like, oh yeah, like giving people like CBD and weed and stuff to help them get through the withdrawals, like just as a comfort, like, but that's it. Like I'm at the point where I can, like, I smoke fucking heavy amounts of weed all fucking day, and it's not like a fucking gateway drug for me or anything. I can even do intramuscular injections of ketamine if I want to. I mean, I haven't for a while. I don't feel like doing it again. I mean, I've got the money to go and buy it if I want to, but I feel like if I use enough concentrates and hash and shit, I get the same kind of effects anyways, without, ravaging my bladder with a, synthetic compound, which, dose makes it a fucking poison. So ketamine in moderation, I think, is fine. But, I mean, anyways, it took me a lot of time, okay? It took me about 7 years to get to the point where I could use drugs in a way where I wasn't just making up excuses in my head to use the drugs of choice for me. Like, for example, psychedelics, so I could take benzos at the end to go to sleep, like, which I would very, very rarely ever do. But like, that's an example of what could be like a self-fulfilling prophecy in the mind of an addict, which is something addicts, we're very, at least we think we're good at doing. Anyways, let's continue.
When I say heroin, what I actually mean is heroin that's primarily made of fentanyl, because you can...
That statement is completely nonsensical. Heroin that is primarily comprised of fentanyl. So I think what he's trying to say is they're selling heroin as fentanyl, or fentanyl as heroin, which they did indeed do when it first came out and started replacing heroin. I found out because I did it. Dealer I was going to for years, he was like a fucking triad dude or whatever, and I tested positive for fentanyl in a piss test, and I was like, what the fuck, yo? And he was like, sorry, it's just what the customers enjoy these days. And I was like, sorry, dude, well, if you're not gonna sell me fucking actual heroin, I'm not coming back to you. And he's like, okay. But yeah, like I mentioned the down before, that's what people call it. They don't call it fucking heroin, they call it down because they know it's not heroin. People who are addicts in my city don't even want heroin anymore. They want fentanyl, and I have no idea why. The times I did it, where I didn't fucking straight out die, and by the way, I know probably like or have known, like, I don't know, like 36 people who have died from fentanyl, or fentanyl analogs, mostly like actual fentanyl when it was being like just slapped into everything, like cocaine and MDMA and what have you.
Can't even find pure heroin anymore. It's just fentanyl everywhere. And if you go to...
Okay, so he completely just contradicted himself. So, I think he just misspoke. I'll forgive him on that.
places like Vancouver, there's a street called Hastings.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see what I call Tentopolis.
Okay.
Oh, man, what do you think?
I used to go to that shop right there because they carried like this brand of organic cigarettes that I couldn't get anywhere else. That's kind of the block. When I was homeless in an attic down here, when I was about 20, so like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, there weren't all these tents. There were like a few, usually that like people who were fucking like smoking fentanyl, injecting or selling fentanyl were kind of holed up in. Again, this is back when fentanyl was still fentanyl, and before Trump and, you know, Great Minister Xi fucking, you know, made a pinky swear not to send fentanyl into, you know, North America anymore, which I think she did enforce, but they just sell analogs. They play the whole research chemical legislation dance of, okay, you made that illegal, we'll just tweak this so it's slightly legal, and then just, you know, that chase continues, and it goes on and on and on. And it makes it more and more dangerous because there's no human trials going on here, you know. Obviously, like, it's not enough time for them, and, you know, who's gonna fund trying like fentanyl analogs that were designed for addicts to abuse? And like I've gotten emails from some of these companies in China. I've been to their websites. They know exactly what the fuck they're doing. Yeah, here. So they're just kind of going PU. Yes, this is a gross area. It is fucking nasty and shit, but like this shows how little
These
of
are all
a
people
Vancouver
who are primarily
addict
addicted
fucking
to fentanyl. I mean, a lot of them do meth as well. It's like they do the meth in between the fentanyl just
okay,
to stave
so
off crack.
that corner there, he actually just inadvertently called all those people meth heads, and those people are not meth heads. I actually have spoken to a couple of them, and they just like smoke weed all day and sell fucking cigarettes, like native cigarettes, for like 25 cents. But what he's about to say is a very ass-backwards point, and I will tell you why, and why this personally, like, I don't get offended much, but it kind of offends me.
Cravings. Imagine using meth as like a stepping stone down from a drug. Meth on its own is crazy.
Okay, so I don't know why someone would use a stimulant to come down from fentanyl. That makes like no sense. But what really happens, and I can say this because like almost all the cool fucking Gen X dads that like I knew growing up are fucking dead now, because after the summer of love, they fell a victim to, you know, the crack epidemic, and over the years struggled with crack on and off, and like meth, crack is a hardcore stimulant. I honestly have more experience with meth than crack. I think they're both fucking awful drugs. I strayed from them when I could. I only really did it when I was homeless and other people were offering it to me. I did, however, inject cocaine, which was a lot stronger than crack. But like, it lasts a very short period of time, and you can go into psychosis very easily. And with meth, it lasts a very long period of time. And people, like, you know, want to sleep at some point, and when you're coming down, you have this very bad hangover, and that's why people, I think, mistake it for being physically addictive, because of how shitty you feel when you stop your binge. But it's just like it's a rebound. It's a really bad hangover. And what makes it go away, they found? heroin, but like they had to do it like they were toking fucking off foil or whatever, or sniffing it for a while until they fell asleep. With fentanyl, however, they found that they could do like one toke and fucking pass out, just come down altogether. Like essentially like a trip killer for meth, except this trip killer can kill you, and it has killed people that I knew, I really cared for, I really looked up to a lot, and it's really, really been hard on their kids. So what he just said is, I don't know where that's coming from, but the only time I've ever known of addicts using stimulants after, and by after I mean like you're injecting it at the same time and like one hits before the other, is mixing cocaine and heroin. I think people very rarely inject meth and heroin because meth is very painful to inject. It's like, it feels like you're injecting like turpentine. I did it like once. It was fucking way too fucking crazy and fucking fiendish and shit for me. But people do fentanyl and meth all the time. They fucking mix it together, but it's not to come down from one to the other. When I shot cocaine with heroin, it was because heroin wasn't getting me high anymore, and I wanted to get high. And the heroin, you'd feel the warmth of it kick in, and then the cocaine would kick in, and you'd feel high. That's the closest approximation in real life I can think of. I don't know what he's talking about otherwise, but just continue.
See, so the world is hurting. I mean, just look at these numbers. Look at this.
Yeah, no, that's true.
The fentanyl category of opioids accounted for 67,325 preventable deaths in 2021, representing a 20% increase over the 53,480 total in 2020.
No, that's true.
I
True.
can't find 2022. I'm assuming it's still rising.
It is rising.
That is fucked up.
It's
usually all these
worse
stats are for
than
the
COVID
states, because according to the
at
internet, the states
peak.
is representative of the entire freaking world. And the story goes like this with most people who fall, unfortunately, victim to these compounds.
Okay, at least he said the states. I mean, but again, like, he's, like, I thought he'd be speaking from the perspective of our city, because that's, like, as you only can, really, unless you've lived somewhere else long enough to understand the dynamics of, you know, the underworld of addiction in that area. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, I don't feel like speaking about other places. Because in other cities in the US, I'm sure heroin is more abundant than it is here. But he, I think, is going to describe how the opioid epidemic happened. I gave you the version of Canada. I think he's going to give you the States version.
Injury. They have a car accident. Their doctor innocently prescribes them oxycodone.
Okay, I'm just gonna skip that part because it's just a recap of like what I said essentially, and innocently prescribe them. I don't think so. Oxys were known to be like very abusive since like the early, or very easy to abuse since like the early 2000s. So like doctors, like the most they give you is like codeine or like Percocet. Oxys, they were found out pretty quickly to be like extremely addictive. I remember back when they first were made unabusable, like I asked actual heroin addicts if they would prefer OxyContin over heroin, and they said 100 times yes, because it lasts longer.
Milligrams of oxycodone, that could kill them. But when they have a tolerance, they can handle that. So a lot of people, what ends up happening, they get clean for like a month or two, and then they jump right back into their high dose, and they fucking overdose and die. But
okay, so this is something that people say a lot, but I honestly, I can't think of any fucking, like, people, like, even the addicts I met in detox and shit, like when I was in, like, youth detoxes, like, so super naive, like, stubborn, hard-headed, me included, people who were there, they didn't do this so much. Like, there's one dude who he detoxed and then he ran away, and like bummed bus money off of people until he could afford these fake oxys that everyone who did them knew they were fentanyl. They didn't look like real oxys at all. If you chopped them up, they were like green. If you've ever like licked the fucking time release or whatever off of an Oxy 80, like a real one, which I haven't seen in a long time, not that I've been looking, it's just like white on the inside. These things were like straight green, but like he knew that since he had detoxed a little bit, not to do the full dose. Addicts are typically not that stupid, but not saying they're smart, but usually just troubled. Let me put it that way. Concurrent disorder. I've explained it before what that is and why it is overwhelmingly what causes addiction, in my opinion, and the opinion of many clinicians. Now, what is, however, true is similar to this point. Not this point, similar. So, you know what naloxone is, yeah? I've naloxoned a couple of people. I am happy to say, out of all the instances where I would have had to use it otherwise, or someone else was about to use it, I was able to wake the person up without naloxone. Because here's what naloxone does. It is a full antagonist. It kicks all the opioids off your receptors, kills your tolerance, and puts you into a terrible precipitated withdrawal. So for the people who I couldn't resuscitate on my own, and did have to hit with Narcan, like usually would have to hit them twice to get them to wake up and they were that far gone, like, you know, piss themselves, they're turning fucking blue and gray, and like, I make sure someone's on calling an ambulance, so they're in the hospital and they're being treated while going through that horrid precipitated withdrawal. I've been through it from Suboxone, but Suboxone is a partial agonist. The one time that I was in Narcan, I didn't have like a fully fledged opiate addiction yet. I thought it was heroin, but it was fentanyl. This was like one of the first instances I ever heard of fentanyl being sold as heroin, which again happened for about a year, and then just people didn't even fucking try doing that anymore. They're just like down because everyone wanted fucking fentanyl if they were an addict. I don't get why. It just seems to make you like basically black out for 3 hours and you wake up fucking dope sick. Like, no. But important thing, yeah. If you really have to Narcan someone, which should be a last resort, try your best to wake them up, keep them fucking awake and alert, so you can spare them the horrendous fucking pain of precipitated withdrawal. If you have to Narcan them, which is, unfortunately the case a lot of the time, what I recommend is, make sure that an ambulance is coming, and because, the problem is they will leave the hospital, this is beyond your control essentially by this point. Once they leave the hospital, a lot of the times they're like in super bad withdrawal. I think we've gotten better at giving them other opioids like hydromorphone in the hospital, so they're not in super bad precipitated withdrawal like it used to be. Because it used to be the problem that no one really spoke of with naloxone was that people were just hitting like any addict left and right who was nodding out, like not even like fully overdosing, which nodding out is on the verge of overdosing, but nodding out is what you try to do when you do these drugs, which shows how dangerous they are. But if someone's not breathing, they're turning fucking blue, lost control of their bladder, etc., not responsive to stimuli. You give them Narcan, ambulance gets them, they leave the hospital, they're like, fuck, I am in terrible withdrawal. I need to use twice as much heroin, fentanyl analogs, whatever the fuck, than I usually do. And because a full antagonist, or even partial agonists, or I call partial agonists like Suboxone partial antagonists because they sure seem more like antagonists, because precipitated withdrawal from Suboxone is from the fight between the buprenorphine, which is in the Suboxone, trying to kick the other opioids in your system or opiates off your opioid receptors. And that battle causes you to go into withdrawal times like fucking 100. It's insane. Like you're like fucking projectile vomiting and like blacking out. And, yeah, it's gnarly. And I can only imagine what's like after like a full antagonist. So like that is similar to what he said, but that's not what he said. What he said is very uncommon, and it takes like a high degree of ignorance. Like drug addicts are actually very well researched a lot of the time, at least before they completely lose themselves. Yeah, there are very few instances, especially now since everyone's addicted to benzos too, and if they just stop, they'll fucking die from seizures, like I will if I stop my prescribed benzos. So, you know, they just keep going. You know, tolerance typically doesn't go fucking anywhere. Like, the government's actually giving fentanyl to people in programs now.
What happens to most people is they start on something like Oxy, and then they have a shortage of pills, or the pills get too expensive, and then one of their friends is like, you know what, you can just buy heroin off the street, and it'll cure your dope sick. Because what happens is when you withdraw from things like Oxy...
Yeah, that's true for the most part. As I said, for me, I wasn't physically addicted to anything until they put me on methadone, but, and as I said, it was in my mind, in the back of my brain, I knew heroin was the same thing. And, like, I could, if I really wanted to, chase this one person around who's very hard to get in touch with, sold very expensive pharmaceuticals, and she had Oxy 80s that she'd get this like Australian stewardess to like smuggle into the country, and it was like $1 a milligram. So, you know, an Oxy 80, which is like usually what I would do, I'd smoke that over the course of about 12 hours, which don't recommend, especially when you are young, lightweight like I am, and don't have a tolerance, because that's a lot. That is a lot. But yeah, I mean, I would do it over 12 hours and still get like fucking really, really high off of it. Yeah, smoking heroin is a very similar feeling. It just lasts a lot shorter.
So you get what is called dope sick. You go into pretty much immediate withdrawals.
Immediate withdrawal? What? No, you gradually go into withdrawal. Like, with stuff like benzos, which is like really the worst thing you can be addicted to, in my opinion, from my experience, because I've been addicted to benzos 3 times now. With benzos, it's like you're using them a couple days on, a couple days off, a couple days on, a couple days off, and then one day you wake up and you realize, oh fuck, I'm in withdrawal. This isn't good. I'm kind of fucked now. Like, it's that instantaneous with benzos. So, I mean, if he was to actually mention the tisalam part of the fentanyl, or the fentanyl analogs, that is what sells as heroin or down. No one calls it heroin anymore. He just keeps saying that because I think that's what, you know, the average person is not going to recognize slang that's like mostly exclusive to addicts. So, you know, I kind of get that, but he could have gotten that out of the way with a few minute, or a minute long explanation, and like just not had to repeat heroin again and again. Here it's kind of warranted, as I said, because of the transition from oxys to heroin and then to fentanyl for most people.
Which feel like death. And just people will do anything to get away from these withdrawals, so then they move over to heroin because it's cheaper. And these days, like I said, there's no heroin. It's all
I've never been through oxy
heroin.
withdrawal, but
And just like that, they went from a car accident, back injury, to oxy, to heroin, to fentanyl, and now they're fucked. And a lot of them die on the streets. It is scary. It's a crisis happening all across.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like it's more something that happens in the States. As I said, oxys were never like heavily prescribed here. they've always been, even when they were abusable, very expensive. Like, I had a friend whose dad got prescribed like fucking like over a dozen different opioids every fucking like day. He had a big fucking new pill fucking box with like the individual sections like full of fucking different strength oxys, and this guy didn't know the fucking he didn't know the prices, so he would just sell them to me for very cheap or trade them to me for like MDMA or something. But usually they were very fucking expensive, and it sounds like in the States they went for $1 a milligram, which is what they started as, and then it kind of went up as they became harder and harder to get.
Across the world, so I just figured.
And also, by the way, heroin is not much cheaper. I just want to get that out now because that's a huge misconception. It's not like for good heroin. Back when it was available, you were looking to spend like $40 for like a QP, a quarter point, 0.25, essentially, like quarter gram, $40. That would be, for someone who doesn't have a tolerance and is just doing it, that would be like 2 strong doses. For someone who does have a tolerance, that would be 1 dose. And that like may make you nod a little bit if you are an addict, who, you know, and again, this is prior to fentanyl, I'm talking about, but, you know, concurrent to those days. I don't know what heroin would go for now because it's just not a thing anymore. Not here.
Different. We're gonna make this video to help keep all of my brothers and sisters, all you fellow drug addicts, safe. Again, this video does not glorify or promote the use of any substances. We're not making this to help, you know, attract people to these things. We're just trying to keep people safe and alive.
He kind of like, okay, a couple things there. He kind of broadly just made the implication his whole audience are a bunch of addicts. I think that's just a little projection on his part. You know, which, hey, you know what? I've been through the cycle of addiction for most of my life, so, you know, I'm not gonna fucking, you know, piss on his fucking black kettle or whatever, but I mean, one common justification that I remember using when I was an addict to heroin, stuff like that, which, like, holy fuck, like, my mindset then compared to now is crazy. But, yeah, I remember, like, it would be as simple as being like, oh, like, say to my parents, for example, you guys drink wine every night, you're addicted in your own way. Like, the guy in Trainspotting even says that, like, when he's stealing his mom's Valium or whatever. Like, it's easy to tell ourselves these things, to basically perpetuate our own addictive tendencies.
Anyway, let's jump right into today's video. All right, so cold turkey, you know, is out of the question. That's when you...
Yeah, you could literally die from that. Cold turkey, because of the benzos now, you could literally die. Cold turkey, for the most part, when it comes to opioids or heroin, whatever, it typically will make you feel like you're gonna die. That's where it tricks you. It will, it basically hardwires itself into your brain as an endogenous chemical. Tricks your brain into, it dupes it into thinking it's an endogenous chemical because it's in your system so much that your body adapts to essentially integrate that chemical into your body as a regular chemical. That also happens to make it feel really good. So your brain kind of likes that. And then when you develop enough to be fixated on it, you know, you're no longer tripping. You're in, and you're kind of fucked if you don't keep using. You don't find that next fix. Like, it really, like stuff like food, shelter, sex, all, you know, those are lesser priorities when you're fucking chasing one heroin fix to another. Again, I'm just speaking from my own experience. I haven't done fentanyl enough, never liked it enough to abuse it, other than just it like getting slipped into my shit all the time before testing was like widely available and before I had the patience to test my shit, because when you're an addict, you really don't have patience, especially with short-acting drugs like heroin, diamorphine. I mean, yeah, that heroin, not whatever the fuck he's talking about.
Just stop taking something, and a lot of people.
So, you can, if you know you're taking just opioids, you can go cold turkey and not die. You may get some brain damage, but I mean, I've gone cold turkey off like heroin, methadone, Suboxone, morphine that I was prescribed, all this stuff. Like, I have been through the fucking. I've been through the grinder, the meat grinder, when it comes to all this shit. Like, you can, but you will feel fucking horrible. Like, yeah, you will be like fucking just like egg pressed on the bed, like fucking sweating bullets, and like, I think that's why addicts become so shameless and, you know, what they take to fucking get their next fix, which, you know, like I admittedly, I used to steal from my parents and shit when I was an addict, and I feel terrible for that. I've apologized to them for that. I've even paid them back a lot of the money. I never stole much. Like, I'd steal like enough for like a kilo, so like $40. But proud to say I never stole from my friends or anything. I still had some morals as an addict. I'd rather go through withdrawal than like completely fuck up a friendship. You know, still, you know, not proud of you know, fucking over my family like that, you know, who have been so good to me. I'm extremely blessed in that regard. Yeah, anyways, let's keep going. So.
People try this and they fail because the withdrawals are so brutal. We're talking not just a runny nose, we're talking feeling like you have the worst flu of your life, fevers, sweats, chills.
I'm hot and cold at the same time!
He needs more blankets and he needs less blankets.
The hot cold flashes are like one of the most brutal parts, and actually, I mean, it's more of a lesser symptom unless you're dealing with precipitated withdrawal, which with precipitated withdrawal, it is one of the most painful parts of it from my experience. It literally felt like I was getting thunderbolts, like just like made of icicles, fucking jabbed in my back again and again. Like, I was blacking out from the pain. It was so bad. But yeah, it's like this like very contradictory, I think antithetical is a better word, like, oh, I'm so cold, put a blanket on, oh, I'm overheating, oh, what the fuck, throw it up. And yeah, like a lot of people say it's like the flu times 100, which is fairly accurate in terms of like putting it in layman's terms other people can understand, but it's not quite accurate. Like, it is a feeling of like imminent fucking peril and demise, and no movie, no TV series other than The Coroner, which is what preceded The Wire. Great fucking miniseries, by the way. Highly suggest checking it out. It's on YouTube, especially if you're a fan of The Wire. I actually enjoyed it more because it's more intimate, and it's also like very interesting. It's, you know, based on real people, and the real people who are still alive make an appearance at the end. It's got the most realistic, by far, depictions of heroin addiction. Most movies get it way off. With that being said, as an addict before, like, you know, before the word triggered became a big thing in 2016, triggered was a term that was like drilled into my head when it came to addiction, and I kind of just roped that into my excuses. Like, I would watch Trainspotting, which, by the way, is a fairly inaccurate portrayal of heroin addiction. I've never seen a baby crawling across the ceiling and falling down on me going through withdrawal. Just kidding. That's not mainly why it's inaccurate. I think Irvine Welsh just like knew a little bit about heroin. He did it for a little while and then wrote a book about like hardcore addicts, but kind of just perpetuated a lot of myths in the process and a little bit glorified heroin. just a little bit. Pulp Fiction definitely glorified heroin, and watching those movies, just like the whole like seeing the blood go into the syringe, because like that was the thing, when you knew when that blood came up, you hit the vein, when you pressed down, you were going into fucking a realm of bliss, at least before I built a heroin tolerance.
I'm afraid you're right.
Shaking, itching, crazy itching, like there's spiders crawling all over you, huddled in the fetal position, puking all day. The withdrawals are brutal. They feel like they are actually sick, and then they will call this substance their medicine.
I don't know where the itching and spiders, I've never fucking heard of that. Maybe if they're like coming down from meth too and going into psychosis a little bit. Yeah, that's new to me. That's new to me. I also, by the way, I get like the heavy nausea and diarrhea from withdrawal, but I very rarely get puked, weirdly enough, because it's a very common symptom. And these are what my addiction specialist told me. The most like definitive ways to tell you're an opioid withdrawal or opiate withdrawal, whatever. I'm gonna say opioids because it's opioid receptors. So how you know is predominantly runny nose and stomach upset. So your stomach will start gurgling at first, and your nose will you'll have like visible snot running down your face. So if you're a user, and you start experiencing that, for one, you probably know what it is, because you'll start feeling that cold pain go through you. People experience different withdrawal symptoms. I guess people experience the itching and shit, but the only time I've ever had itching is after you do a shot. You'll get, because opioids make you itchy when you have a low tolerance. They have this histamine effect, and it can also make you I used to puke the first few times I snorted heroin, and it felt amazing. That's how fucking addictive heroin is. You can stare at the wall for 6 hours and be content. Fentanyl, it just seems like you kind of just fucking pass out. Anyways.
I need my medicine because they're so sick. So, the number one thing that you're going to want to do if you're trying to get off your oxy, methadone, fentanyl, all these things, is you want to first start lowering your dose. This is called the taper.
Okay, again, tapers are, yes, indeed, what you should do, especially if you are doing, and I've seen a lot of documentaries in cities in the States. Seems like most of their, fentanyl has etizolam in it, or some sort of other, barely legal benzo. We banned it in Canada. It used to be legal. I used to buy it fucking pure powder. But they made it illegal because it was being mixed into fentanyl so much. I've heard they've started substituting tranquilizers, but if they have, I think that would ravage the fucking addiction community a lot more, because then they'd be going into benzo withdrawal. But so I don't know how true that is. I go through the thick of all this, the areas he showed, because the place I buy weed is right around the corner from where all those tents were and shit. I think that, if you're gonna taper, doctors do have, as he's showing here, they have methods for doing that. I got myself addicted to fucking Xanax. Not even taking that much, but because I've been addicted to benzos before, I have central nervous system sensitivity, I was primed to get addicted to them fairly quickly, and fairly easily, and they had to put me on a very high dose of Valium to get off of it, and I am only about halfway down. It is fucking awful, man. It is fucking awful. I'm also on methadone, so there's comorbid withdrawal. The two impact each other. like, it's, oh god, it's so fucking immensely dangerous. I can only imagine what something super powerful like fentanyl, and its Islam, which is, from my experience, taking the pure stuff from labs. It is a very fucking potent drug. Okay, proceed.
The brain needs time to adjust to a lower dose of opioids, and this adjustment can take months to years.
Yeah, it varies on the
No, I
person.
can't give direct advice on how to specifically take
You are giving direct advice. Fuck. I'm sorry. It's just making me mad. Yeah, you need clinical supervision while you do this. I don't mean you need someone in the room with you the entire time, but you need to, like, if you do a taper, see a doctor, get a plan. They'll probably get you to come back every few days at first, and then depending on how you do in terms of your own self-control and not using and all that jazz, they will, make changes based on those factors once they're taken into consideration.
raw fentanyl, but if you're on something like Oxy, this is easier. Say you're on 80 milligrams a day, slowly taper down to, I don't know, do 80, then lower it to 60 for a few days, then you're going to lower it to 50 for a few days, and you're going to keep dropping it down until you can either hop right off and go cold turkey, or stepping stone down, or step one more step down the stairs onto something like Kratom. So after the taper, you're going to move...
Okay. A couple things. One, there are charts you can look up if you are considering a taper. I would say if you're considering one, you can look up these. There's like COWS, COWS, it's an acronym, is a way of, it's a questionnaire that tells you how severe your withdrawal symptoms are. I can put that in the description of this video for you. But him talking about substituting Kratom. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. For one, I'm going to start with a little story, okay? The only time I used it a couple nights in a row, trying in vain. It was miserable every fucking time. And this was back before fentanyl had overtaken the opioid fucking, like the monopoly on opioids that it has now on the streets, or well, the analogs do. This was back when it was just the fentanyl and not the analogs like carfentanil and whatnot, but you could still get heroin, and I was like, it was hard to find a steady source though, so I was occasionally doing hydromorphone, which is similar. They actually give that to any addict who will ask for it. If I ask for it, I can get it because it's like super easy to crush up and inject. It doesn't help a lot though. It's very short acting, and it's especially for people who are addicted to fentanyl. I imagine like they probably don't even feel it. It's not very strong unless you're like getting a shot of it in the hospital from like with the actual liquid form, not crushing up a fucking pill and then pulling it through a wheel filter or whatever. And you lose a lot of the active psychoactive compounds in the process. But anyways, substituting, I really fucking try to caution people on any of this. Like it took me like 5 years of mostly clean, like occasionally I would relapse on benzos, to get to the point where I was going to this pain clinic, and like they had to talk me into taking ketamine. And then I did, and I was like, oh yeah, this shit isn't that bad. Fucking, this actually is beneficial. I'm going to use this therapeutically, and that led to me using cannabis again and using psychedelics again. Because keep in mind, I thought I had fried my fucking brain from acid. I was scared shitless of cannabis. I never wanted to fucking do anything remotely psychedelic again. And once again, I'm at a point in my life where I think the next psychedelic I'll do is ibogaine. A year from now or whatever, when I get to go off methadone, which, also it's not that simple. You have to get addicted to a shorter acting drug like morphine or hydromorphone, which my doctor is willing to do before you can take ibogaine. And by the way, using the definition for opioid that he uses with Kratom, just because it works on the opioid receptors. Like, again, an opioid is something synthetically made in a lab. By that metric, Ibogaine would be an opiate because it has mild affinity for the opioid receptors. Anyways, yeah, so I decided, because it's legal in my city to buy, I decided to try Kratom because a lot of people said that it helped them with their withdrawal a little bit. I would say, if anything, it made it worse for me. I made a tea that I strained so many fucking times. I basically ruined my fucking coffee machine doing this. But I can't remember the dose exactly, but I remember I put a lot of research into it beforehand. This was a long time ago, so just, bear that in mind. I was still being fairly responsible despite going into withdrawal. I was so used to being in withdrawal all the time back then anyways. Yeah. It made me fucking puke like crazy. And remember how I said I almost never puked when I would get withdrawal? The only times I have is from precipitated withdrawal, which again, withdrawal times 1,000. And that's maybe a little hyperbolic. Maybe it's more times 100. It's fucking intense, dude. It is along with that 9-hour seizure I had from antidepressants, the worst thing I've experienced in my life. But Kratom didn't help with the withdrawal at all. And keep in mind, he is talking to people who are using fentanyl theoretically. Keep that in mind. And Kratom has no affinity for the GABA receptors as far as we know. The only intoxicating effects I felt from it, I remember I did end up taking pretty much all of what I bought because it just wasn't fucking doing anything except making me puke. So essentially I just no, this fucking stuff sucks. I hate it. Why would anyone fucking endure this crap to get high? And so I got no relief from the opioid withdrawal, and I felt only like I had taken a pregabalin or something. I just felt a little woozy. That was it. It was frustrating because it's fucking expensive. I was I could have fucking gotten 2 shots for that price. Yeah. Needless to say, my experience with it was fucking terrible. Your mileage may vary, as I always say, but please, I'm begging you, do not fucking substitute an opioid for Kratom. Especially if you're tapering off of something. The only suggestions I can make if you're on a taper that is clinically supervised is depending on what works for you, you can do things to make it more comfortable, like smoking weed. Smoking weed for me makes it more comfortable. CBD, more than anything, I think, helps because it actually depresses your nervous system, and that way you can get nervous system depression and a little bit of comfort, like a benzo would give you otherwise, which they wouldn't even prescribe benzos to me when I was going through very severe methadone withdrawal. I was on a fucking stupidly high dose of methadone. To put that in perspective, 170 milligrams of methadone, that is enough to kill multiple people without tolerance. And I was 17, I want to say. Those years kind of all just blend together, but fucking brutal shit. And Kratom would not have helped. I'm saying that right now. And fentanyl is it is a full agonist. It's why it's used in anesthesia, more so twilight sleep types, colonoscopies, cystoscopies. They did this one thing to me where they were shooting injecting iodine into my brain, and it would make it look like firecrackers were going off in front of my eyes, and it fucking burned like a motherfucker. And they gave me fentanyl and midazolam because I had to be like slightly responsive. And it'd be like, look up, look up, look up, but it fucking hurt. So it is like, it's still used in hospitals. That's the only place you'll find actual fentanyl these days, unless it's a government program giving it to you. Which, you know, it's not easy to get onto something like that. But yeah, substituting one addiction for another is just, I've harped on this before. It is a very destructive fucking thing. Like, back before that, like 5 years of mostly clean time, and then the clean time I've had now, you know, I'm doing this because, you know, I've done ketamine and DMT and, you know, lots of cannabis, lots of cannabinoids. I haven't done DMT or ketamine for a while. My doctor knew about, you know, like, I just be honest with him because that is the best thing, but like he didn't trust anyone because most of the people he sees are fucking hopeless addicts. But now he like legitimately thinks I have like the potential to turn my life around, and I'm not like just hopelessly gonna burn out like most of his patients. And it's flattering to hear after 7 years. I met him when I went off the methadone. Yeah, I really have to caution people against substituting drugs because, like, yeah, prior to that 5 years, I remember when I first went on Suboxone, I believe, I was like, okay, I can't do opiates, or opiates, heroin, you know, or opioids like hydromorphone. Again, I never sought out fentanyl except for severe precipitated withdrawal, where I was like, this is the only way out. That's how strong fentanyl is. It's the only thing that can kick all the other shit fighting for your receptors out of the way to get in there. So like it's like, think of how little I got from doing a high dose of it when I was in heroin hydromorphone withdrawal. Stuff that is like, okay, fentanyl itself is 50 times more powerful than heroin. Fentanyl analogs tend to be about 10 times as strong as fentanyl. Do you think Kratom would help those people? Anyone who got even the remote, like most, like minute amount of relief, now they're taking a drug that they can get addicted to again. Like, this is causing a bad cycle. Like when I was first on Suboxone, I started using psychedelics again, and I was like abusing them basically. I was using them as a means of escape, and that was when I got the fucking hard lesson from like a heroic dose of mushrooms, that if you abuse us, we'll abuse you. And that is what changed my perspective on psychedelics, but I like refused to do them for like 7 years or something after that. 5 to 7 years, give or take.
Move on to Kratom. Now, usually I'm heard saying nothing but bad shit about Kratom, but this is where it really shines. It is not an opioid by nature. In fact, it has over 40 active alkaloids, 2 of which are opioids, the main one being called mitragynine, and because of its activity on the...
One of the worst things you can do for yourself as an addict is be around other addicts using. Like, really, like it's... It is a self-validating environment where, you know, using is, you don't face the consequences of, you know, saying I'm having cravings or whatever to people who aren't addicts themselves, you know, which is one of the harder parts of addiction. You know, you just can't relate with people who aren't addicts, but then, you know, you hang out with addicts and, well, you kind of get what you pay for. I actually cut pretty much most of the addicts out of my life because they just were like not going down good paths. And the last one, who I just thought like he was a very misunderstood guy. I guess I was wrong because he stole $150 worth of Atizolam from me to make into heroin. He tried to offer me money for it. I said, no, I am not fucking giving this to you to make into fucking down, like with fentanyl or whatever. Like, I don't want to be responsible for someone dying. No, and he just fucking took it anyways. Fuck that guy. Fuck that guy. Like, some addicts, it's sad to say, but they're hopeless. I may very well be someone who may just, like, ding dong one day have that fucking ugly spirit knocking. But, I mean, in the meantime, like, I'm pretty content with just heavily smoking weed and cigarettes. Not good for you, but definitely is a means of channeling comfort for me. But it took, or cravings, for me, but it took a long time to feel disciplined enough to do that. And I still think of Philip Seymour Hoffman and how he was clean for a long time. And he relapsed, and I think he died within like 3 weeks of using it. And like the amount of shit that was in his system was like, I think it may have been like he started using and was like, I've gone too far, I'm just gonna fucking off myself before the shame overtakes me, you know, because like the addicts who aren't sociopaths, because there are a lot of them out there, there's a lot of addicts who are like grown children, they're like spoiled brats, they believe they deserve fucking everything. Like, I even had a bit of an entitled attitude when I was like into hardcore drugs. It's just something that happens. It's like people have personality types, and some personality types, they gravitate towards addiction because it, you know, makes doing manipulative stuff like that much easier, because now you're doing it, you know, to provide yourself with what your brain, if you're on a physically addictive drug, now regards as crucial to its survival. But yeah, with that being said, I mean, yeah, like some addicts are just like really fucking like smug and like, give me this, give me that, like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, and trust me, I've spent a lot of time hanging out in really shady government housing building stuff. So I was homeless for years on those very streets that he pointed out. They didn't have the tents up like that back then, as I said, but trust me.
Say it relieves all of them. Now, I can't recommend specific dosages, just look it up online. I don't want to make it seem like I'm promoting its use here, but
you are promoting its use.
accessible,
That's exactly what you're fucking doing.
bullshit.
Okay, I'm skipping him talking about all the strains. Okay, he's getting into Suboxone. This, I think, is potentially the most dangerous piece of advice he gives. And I'm probably going to timestamp this in the video, because I think this is what, if anything, someone should take away, like any lesson that you want to refine from my assessment and like adjuncts and sort of little corrections to what he's saying. Again, I'm not a doctor, but with that being said, I actually, with a lot of doctors I've spoken to, I know how these drugs work better than they do. That doesn't make me qualified still, but he's gonna tell you essentially, I skipped him going through all the different strains of Kratom and shit, because yeah, don't do that, man. Like if you really need a taper, go to a detox where you are supervised. And like if you're just like recently addicted to an opioid for the first time, you know, go to a detox, they'll get you sorted, and they may offer a methadone taper. I would say if you really feel like you need it, you can taper relatively painlessly off of an opioid or heroin, Oxycontin with methadone over like a week, basically. I think fentanyl is a similar amount of time, but I think it's a bit trickier because fentanyl is like it has more affinity for the opioid receptors than methadone. But if you're in a detox, you are I'm assuming in the hands of people who know what they're doing, and you know, if it's like a third world country detox, you know, you might want to research the place a little bit first. The detoxes I've went to are very good because we have, like, I think now the worst drug problem in all of North America in our city. It's at least always been in the top 3, and I think it is by far worse than it ever has been. Like, he's not joking about the 10 cities. They're fucking everywhere. And, like, I see them on fire all the time while the inhabitants are just, like, nodding out inside, and I have to, like, fucking grab them and be like, yo, you fucking tensions on fire, you're about to fucking, like, your hair was starting to frizzle and shit, and usually they get mad at me and they fucking yell at me, and I just, okay, whatever, you're welcome, bye.
Anyways, another thing that a lot of people use is something called Suboxone.
Treatment with Suboxone.
Remember what I said about Suboxone precipitated withdrawal? Keep that in mind. Now, just let's be clear. I've been on Suboxone 3 times. It is, when it works, a fairly clean maintenance opioid, blocks off your receptors, which is supposed to reduce cravings. I found, like, back in the heat of addiction, it really didn't. I even found a way to get around the whole, like, heavy fucking deterrent that Suboxone has with relapses, which is if you use Suboxone while you have an opioid, or let's just say particles on your opioid receptors that are not endorphins, if you take it while those are still there, you are going to precipitate withdrawal. As it's a partial agonist, it slowly has to kick all these things off your receptors and merge to your receptors, and then you may start feeling better. I found that, like, it took a while before I started to feel better with Suboxone every single time I went on it. I found I started to get weird side effects after a while, so I, like, always inevitably went off of it. But, like, yeah, I had a whole system of, like, okay, if I do something like hydros or morphine, which I know lasts no longer than 6 hours, then I'll wait 12 hours and take my Suboxone. And, like, that was actually effective for the most part. And then I made the mistake with Percocet and waiting 24 hours and went into horrible precipitated withdrawal. Yeah, so, like, Suboxone is a very, very fucking, you gotta be very careful with it. It is a risky one. It is a risky maintenance drug. Methadone just kind of blocks your opioid receptors off, walls them off, and, like, I've said this before, like, when I was first on it, when methadone is methadone and not these weird versions they have of it now that, like, aren't quite as potent. Everyone who's an addict I've spoken to says this. Back when it was methadone, where it was, like, pre-mixed with tang, I could binge for days, because you could go for 3 days of not getting the daily witness of methadone, which is what you would have to do if you are considered, you know, someone prone to relapse. Like, you have to earn getting methadone carries. I have methadone carries now because my doctors trust me. But before, yeah, I had to go to the drugstore every day. And if you missed 3 days, or more than 3 days, it's more than 3 days, you were cut off. And you'd have to go back to the clinic. So what I would do is, I had this ex, she sadly, she had a lot of problems. She committed suicide 6 months after she broke up with me. Because she was fucking my friend who was her ex, and he, I did not know this, was very physically abusive to her, and that apparently, I guess, pushed her over the edge. But me and her used heroin together. It was a very unhealthy relationship. She was also way older than me, another one to add to that list. I didn't know because she looked the same age as me, like all these other way older girls who dated me as a teenager. Yeah, like, I would go out, because she lived way out of the city, binge with her for 3 days, come back, do methadone, feel fine. Like, it was like, if anything, it was a safety blanket from using. So, but it's so fucking addictive. Like, it's more addictive than heroin and shit. Like I honestly think government should be giving people heroin over methadone. It's so addictive. It changes you not just on a cellular level, but like even your bones change. I fucking hate it. Can't wait to get off it. But Suboxone, oh boy, like that's it does a similar type thing with the walling off of the pain receptors, but precipitated withdrawal is what makes it like a very like I think there's a couple of reasons why. One is kind of conspiratorial, so I'm not going to say this for sure. Doctors won't prescribe it because they know of that heavy deterrent. Thing is, addicts will do stupid shit anyways. Like I said, times I deliberately used fentanyl, I was in precipitated withdrawal. I could barely move, barely speak. I'd call up a dealer, fucking be like, yo, just get down here, fucking, I got $20, give me some. And it would cut through the precipitated withdrawal, and then I'd be back in withdrawal in like 3 hours and fucking have to go through the process again. It was not helpful at all, but it was the only thing strong enough as a full agonist to kick through the partial antagonist, partial agonist, or whatever you want to call it, that is buprenorphine, the active component in Suboxone. There's a common misconception about Suboxone that it's the naloxone, which, as I said, is a full antagonist within it that gives you precipitated withdrawal. Not true. Naloxone is inert. It is there, and is only activated if you crush it up and you like snort it or something, so you go into immediate withdrawal. It's just a deterrent from abusing it. I actually abused it prior to being on methadone or anything, and actually got like a buzz out of it. It was probably like the least euphoric opioid I've done. Opioid is definitely an opioid. It's a morphine analog. It's a very weird one at that too. But yeah, so what he's going to say here, I'm just going to summate it really quickly. He's going to say use Suboxone to get off of fentanyl. Again, that is a recipe for going into terrible fucking withdrawal if you still have any fentanyl in your system whatsoever. And I'm just saying fentanyl now because I don't want to fucking have to say analog every time afterwards. So just let's do that for the sake of brevity. The reason I was just pointing that out a lot is because he never said that once. And it just shows how little he knows, because the analogs make all the difference in the world. Like, fentanyl is per dose, I think, the second strongest drugs when it comes to psychoactive drugs, behind LSD. But with its toxicity profile, it's far more dangerous than LSD, because LSD is not thought to be toxic. There's no accounts except for that elephant that was injected with like 10,000 hits or something. For some reason, I can't remember why they did this. You can Google it and look into it if you want. I think it was actually the sedatives they gave the elephant that killed it anyways. I really can't recall why the fuck that happened. It was a long time ago. Probably CIA. They did some weird shit with LSD. Anyways, it's potent in micrograms. But guess what? I think it starts at 150, like low dose. So fentanyl is 150 micrograms. I think that's like threshold. Carfentanil, the most common analog that came after it, was potent in 15 micrograms and up. How do you think a fucking addict is going to mix that accurately in their fucking government apartment with fucking Tizlam, tranquilizers, whatever? This is a big reason why it's so dangerous.
Can reduce withdrawal symptoms and lower the risk of overdose.
No. It can make withdrawal symptoms worse. Okay, like as I said, I had to go cold turkey off methadone for 5 days to get on Suboxone. It was fucking hell. I didn't sleep for that entire 5 days. I was lucky enough to be in a cushy fucking government youth fucking detox where they gave you cigarettes, baked you cookies, and like were just really nice to you overall. But I couldn't take anything other than clonidine, which, by the way, if he's suggesting anything to people, like, you know, clonidine is something that would help for the most part as long as you don't have like arrhythmia or blood pressure issues, you know, but talk to a doctor, get a doctor to assess you on that and prescribe it if need be. It helps a little bit, but not much. As I said, even after the 5 days when they gave me this Suboxone, they gave me a very, very small dose because of that risk of precipitated withdrawal. I felt kind of shitty for a little while. Like I felt like I was kicking the last of the methadone off my receptors. And then they slowly, very gradually, over like a week, maybe two, this whole fucking time was like I didn't sleep at all. I wasn't completely miserable again because good people working there, decent environment. But it was a very long, protracted, painful experience. It's supposed to limit cravings when you're on it, but it does not limit withdrawal. That's just flat out disinformation. That is wrong. Methadone will. Methadone will probably make you feel well. That's why I say, like, you know, if you're in a detox, you know, they may offer you a methadone taper. That is probably your best bet, but I would not suggest continuing to use it afterwards unless you really feel like you are going to be on opioids for the rest of your life, which is just, you know, that is the case with a lot of people. I think if I didn't pull out of the fucking the hardcore drug scene, when I did, I would probably be there myself. Like, I narrowly fucking escaped it, and I am not immune to getting sucked back into it. So trust me, I'm very honest with myself about these faults. As I said, Philip Seymour Hoffman, that's what I think of. I could just, like, light bulb switch fucking, oh, all of a sudden I want to fucking use. But I mean, I think for starters there'd have to be heroin available. As I said, there was a guy actually selling pure heroin for like 2 days, and I didn't go there. But in any case, yeah, like, methadone I was put on because for the first time second time I went to detox, I still wasn't physically addicted, but like my folks were like, you know, again, I was a teenager, I was quite young when I started using heroin and shit. My folks were like getting sick of my shit, and they're like, you need to go to detox or whatever, like, so I just, or you need to go to treatment. I just went to detox. First time they gave me Valium, I think the first time I even took Valium, and I remember it gave me like weird brain zaps, which I start to get when I'm in Valium withdrawal now. Second time, they offered me a methadone taper, and I was like, oh yeah, fucking that's the shit my ex used to take, and I took a sip once, and it made me really fucking high for 24 hours. Sure. And it did make me feel high for like the first few doses, and then they offered it to me afterwards, and I was like, fuck yeah, I want to get high every day for free, and I did for 3 weeks, and then I was addicted, and yeah, then that's when the addiction really reared its fucking ugly head. Like, if I could, yeah, you know, change the past and go on Suboxone instead, I wouldn't. I wouldn't. I don't think that would make me any healthier. I mean, as I said, I quit like 3 or 4 years later from methadone because of circumstances that were complete bullshit, and it would take a long time to explain. So I won't. But I made my own decision to go off of it because the place I was forced to stay at was, they were just fucking with me and like being like, oh, we think you're fucking high, piss in this cup. Oh, wait, we gotta send this to a lab, so sorry, we're holding your methadone for a couple days because there could be stuff that, is not showing up in our test, that, like GHB or whatever. And it was just because I was happy that I was getting laid for the first time, like, a while, because anyways. So I was like, fuck it, I'm an adult now. I left that place, called the detox as I was starting to go into withdrawal. Fucking went down, got checked out. That's where I met my current doctor, who refused to give me Valium and shit. Like, he just gave me clonidine and Seroquel for sleep, which I took once, and it had this very adverse effect where it made me feel like I was tripping really hard on acid, so I never took it again. But anyways, that was how I first got onto Suboxone, and I have been on and off it twice since then, and I fucking hate it. I fucking hate Suboxone. It is the most unnatural feeling of all the maintenance drugs, and I really, if you are a fledgling addict, meaning, you're just getting into this stuff, and maybe you're starting to develop homeostasis, you're starting to get more than just rebound symptoms, which aren't quite withdrawal, but it's a worsening of things that felt better when you're using, when you're not using. If you absolutely need a methadone taper or something like that, go for it. If doctors say, because in some cases they can give you Suboxone tapers, but it's usually quite tricky, and it's like as I said, in my case, it was like not very pleasant. Other times I went on it, I went into precipitated withdrawal every time they tried to start me on like a low dose. That being said, the option is out there. If you really want to try it, go for it, but I wouldn't recommend it. I also wouldn't recommend a methadone taper either. Again, I wouldn't recommend anything but getting clinical supervision throughout that process. But I would say, given my experiences and how methadone addiction, first physical addiction I experienced, was like the prime excuse I needed as an addict to fucking use. Especially because it came with the caveat of you are an addict now because this is a drug only people who will never stop are put on. So that, to my 16-year-old brain, was like, I think I was 16, maybe 17. Fuck yeah. I'm getting high every day for free. Fuck yeah. I get to do as much heroin as I want. Fuck yeah. Like, avoid that if you can. But, there are cases, and, if you're one of those cases, don't feel bad about it. I mean, fucking, this shit is notoriously hard to quit. A lot of people just don't make it out. I remember the stats used to be like 9 out of 10 out of heroin addicts didn't survive and died from heroin overdose. Best thing you can do is harm reduction. Safe supply of needles and so forth. Hopefully the government will legalize these drugs in a way where it can, like, people can take stuff like heroin and supervised injection sites like Portugal and Switzerland has done, and hopefully they will not just give them the drugs to people, they will pair it with something that will instill a sense of meaning in society and meaning in their lives, because that's what addicts really lack. I'm speaking personally here, and what I've noticed in other people, what other people have expressed to me, who are addicts themselves, or former addicts. You have a lot of self-esteem issues when you're an addict, especially when you're in withdrawal and all the stuff you've been suppressing by numbing yourself out is coming back, like, really hard. Like, you feel like you're fucking, like, personally speaking, I felt like I wasn't worth anyone, I wasn't worth anything, I was just a fucking scourge on this planet, which, hey, I very well may be. I'm not confirming or denying that, but I like to think I try to give back as much as I take, but I don't take without asking these days. So, anyways, let's fucking finish this up, man.
The buprenorphine in Suboxone is a partial opioid agonist. As an opioid, it still produces analgesia and euphoria, but as a partial...
Okay, it only does if you don't have an opioid tolerance. As I said, I did it recreationally when I was a teenager, like before I even was doing heroin, and it got me a little bit high, and I did like fucking 2 of the 8-milligram tablets, which is a lot when you don't have a tolerance. I was stupid, I was a kid, fucking, but I mean, I still didn't even get that high. I think that could be like almost an overdose though for like most people who don't have a tolerance. Like a real bitch about Suboxone too is the tablets, like I had to take like 4 of them when I was prescribed them. And they're so big, they're like these fucking big, like wafer horse fucking tablets, and like they take an hour for 2 to dissolve, and then another hour for 2 to dissolve under your tongue. And if you swallow it, it just doesn't work. It just gets metabolized. So you have to waste 2 hours out of your day to take it. Keep that in mind. That may not sound like much, but after years of doing it, it becomes a real fucking bitch, and it tastes awful. Tastes like synthetic lemon. It's so bad. I hate it.
agonist, these effects are felt to a lower extent.
And also, like, if you are taking it, like, let's say theoretically that you are clean off of opioids long enough, which is usually at least 5 days to get on Suboxone. How would you get there if there's benzos in your dope and you're addicted to benzos? That would kill you way before you could even get there. So even if in the way he is misdirecting this advice on, or more so I guess the right term, or the term I'm looking for is more so the misguided approach he has here. Well-intentioned, maybe. I mean, I know he's probably getting paid for this. Yeah, of course he's getting paid for this. But I mean, this seems more like honest than most of his videos. But I mean, he clearly is like sorely lacking on a lot of information. And I know my voice is not going to make a big difference here, but like I feel ethically obliged to fucking respond to this. Even if I get a copyright strike, I don't care. This is very important information that should be out there. If it prevents one, like, you know, even just someone having to go through precipitated withdrawal or whatever, or getting addicted to Kratom, it's fucking worth it. So yeah, what he's saying is, you know, it's a partial agonist. I've already described this about buprenorphine, and then he goes into Vivitrol, which is like, I believe, naltrexone. It's like Suboxone or buprenorphine, which is, you know, the Suboxone's the brand name, which, funnily enough, Purdue, this is another reason I don't really trust Suboxone that much. It's not Suboxone's fault. It's the fault of the people who fucking make them. At least the brand name ones, which, by the way, very fucking expensive. About as expensive as like a heroin habit back in the day. It was like $8 a pill. And I remember I was taking like 4 pills. So like with $50 worth of heroin, I would have been like fucking able to get through the day. And not addicted to this drug that, you know, has the same half-life roughly as methadone and would take at least 30 days if you were to go cold turkey off of it to, you know, kick, and then you'd have like, I don't know, a year at least of post-acute withdrawal symptoms. So yeah, it's nasty business. Like, unless you're a hardcore addict, I'd say try not to use maintenance drugs. But be honest with yourself. If you really do need maintenance drugs, talk to your doctor about what would suit you the best. What's out there is methadone, buprenorphine, Suboxone, the naltrexone shot he's talking about, which, from what I understand, is similar to buprenorphine in that it's like a partial agonist, but it's a shot that, like, it's kind of like how some antipsychotics have shots that make it last like 30 days, so it's like a slow release inside your body. What the contraindications, complications are compared to Suboxone with precipitated withdrawal. Here, I'll Google it real quick. It'll take me 2 seconds to figure out. Naltrexone precipitated withdrawal. If a person with an opioid use disorder takes naltrexone too soon before 5-7 days have passed, 5 to 7 days, that person will experience precipitated withdrawal. Adam, really? See, I wasn't even sure in my own head because that's the one I haven't been on. I've been on morphine, methadone, Suboxone. Morphine for the shortest period is really just forced on me, and it had horrible side effects. Yeah, Adam, dude, seriously, that took me 2 seconds, and like Suboxone, you have to be off of opioids altogether for 5 to 7 days, and this shot lasts a month. So, here, okay. How long does precipitated withdrawal last from naltrexone? With Suboxone, it's usually fairly short, but like really intense. It's hard to find articles that aren't just about Suboxone. See, this talks about what causes precipitated withdrawal. Oh wow, he like basically read word for word from this site. That's wow. And this is like one of those sites that like is a big ad for a fucking rehab, but is like essentially trying to make it look like it's just trying to educate you. If you're an addict or just someone who researches drugs, you've probably come across these sites before. If you look at the URL, it is drugrehab.com, and he, like, one of the lines here, he was reading word for word. Here, let me give it to you. And it's funny because it was also in the precipitated withdrawal part. Sorry, I just lost it. See, I'm gonna read this part though, because this is crucial. I don't know how the fuck he missed this. There is, however, an important caveat. The person must already be in the mild to moderate stages of opiate withdrawal when they use Suboxone. And by the way, since Kratom, whatever the fuck people are pronouncing it as, just being like a dozen things over the last year alone. I'm sorry, it's just starting to piss me off. I'm getting angry here. I'm not gonna lie. This shit has killed me. It has killed so many people. I'm not buprenorphine, naltrexone. I'm pretty sure someone I know, friend's dad who is, fairly close with. I'm pretty sure because of his toxicology, that he went into precipitated withdrawal from Suboxone, and he just fucking, as Joe Rogan says, threw the kitchen sink at it and did like every opiate he could get his hand on to get himself out of it, and overdosed and died. This is why this is dangerous, and I am like passionately going against I'm gonna say zealous, because I want an element of righteous indignation in there, but this is like going against the model of YouTube videos I wanted to put out, like structured, forethought, all that, more professional, like, level up from the amateur shit I've been doing. But I just had to do a video on this because this is how bad, like, like, this article says stuff that he was reading verbatim. But yeah, for him to miss this, the person must already be in the mild to moderate stages of opiate withdrawal when they start Suboxone. If they aren't, the drug will knock any remaining opioids off the brain's receptors and plunge the person into an immediate and agonizing withdrawal. You know what? I just realized. So at the beginning of the video, when he said you immediately go into withdrawal when you stop an opioid, and I was kind of like, huh? What? You know, it's like something like gradually happens as it goes out of your system. Unless you just like with fentanyl, this is very common. You just nod out the entire time and you wake up and you're like, fuck, I'm in withdrawal now, great. But you would have had to do a lot to fucking get to that stage. Yeah, so naltrexone seems to, like, it does the same thing. Yeah, listen, this is the symptoms of precipitated withdrawal. Excessive and projectile vomiting. I had that. This, like, again, I don't puke for some reason when I get opioid withdrawal. Like, I'll get extreme gastric reflux and diarrhea, but I won't fucking puke. Only examples where I have one episode of precipitated withdrawal that was amongst several in a very botched, like, transfer from morphine to morphine extended release to Suboxone, which was just heavily botched by the clinician doing it. This is a clinician. This is a YouTuber telling you to do. Okay, see, can you understand why this is making me angry? So, abdominal cramps, profuse diarrhea, severe muscle cramps and body aches, seizures, altered levels of consciousness. Yeah, like you actually like black out and go to weird like fucking places. It's fucking crazy. It's not cool. It's not like, oh, this is trippy. It's because you're in a lot of fucking pain. Fever, severe anxiety, agitation, dilated pupils, sweating and chills, flushing, severe headache. Yeah, I had like all of that. How to stop precipitated withdrawal. Yeah, so they're basically saying the same thing my doctor said to me. See, oh, this is important. This shows how bad it is and why fucking you really, really should not go on Suboxone without a fucking doctor. Buprenorphine, naltrexone, I only could imagine, like, maybe the precipitated withdrawal sticks with you for the entire shot. I don't know, because I don't know naltrexone that well, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. But they're saying in some cases it warrants putting the person under anesthesia because of how painful it is. And I can totally see why. And keep in mind, I live in a country where we have like essentially free medical care to an extent. Like some things do start to cost money, like, you know, prescriptions you don't get for free unless it's like generic stuff and you're on disability. But yeah, so like I needless to say, I am not an advocate of wasting resources, even though so much of the system, I think, wastes their own resources and people's time, consequentially, better than anyone else ever could. Yeah, so I'm gonna put the COWS chart in the description, which is the chart they use to determine like how severe your withdrawal is before putting you on Suboxone. You have to be in moderate to severe acute withdrawal, as it said here. Well, it just said moderate. It didn't put in the acute part. Yeah, see, timing is key. You should wait at least 12 to 24 hours. If you're using a long-acting opioid such as Oxycontin or methadone, you should wait at least 1 or 2 days. With oxys, it's shorter lasting, but it's still long-lasting. So I can't speak for that because I haven't had experience being addicted to oxys. But with methadone, remember, for me, it took 5 days. And I was still getting a little precipitated withdrawal from a tiny dose. He is saying, he mentioned Oxycontin and methadone, so I'm assuming he's read this page. And that makes me think it's almost like he's maliciously putting out information. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, is he just really fucking high on Kratom and like kind of picking and choosing stuff from this site, which, you know, these rehab sites are typically copy and pasted from other sites? But like, yeah, no, he's just like being very lazily fucking like quoting certain parts and leaving out like some of the fucking heavy duty shit. Like the reason he's probably not mentioning methadone is because it's considered to be highly addictive because it's been around for a long time. Suboxone is being buprenorphine, that is the active compound. Suboxone is the brand name, as I said. I used to take the brand name stuff because I got a coupon from my doctor to get it for free. After that, it was like very expensive, and I stopped. Like I went on back on methadone. Suboxone, when you are on it as a maintenance drug, and if you aren't using, it does seem to have the least side effects out of the other ones. Morphine extended release had the worst ones for me. I didn't take a shit for 8 days. I was so constipated, it was like I felt like I was turning toxic. I mean, the fucking constipated morphine-induced toxic Avenger. Anyways, yeah, precipitated withdrawal can last up to 48 hours with naltrexone. Wow. Yeah, because it usually is like an hour, but it seems like forever because it's that painful. Okay, so now
Trawl, which is a prescription injection.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just gonna skip over this because we're almost at the end of the video. He's saying take that if you wanna come off of fucking like he's not even saying come off of it and then go on it when it's out of your system. Like he's just saying take this instead. Like that is a fucking explosive combination, and it's just like you also got to keep in mind like the reckless nature that addicts hold when we are in our darkest, most desperate hours. And for me, it was definitely precipitated withdrawal. That was what made me go, fuck it, I don't care if this guy's got fentanyl. I just want this to go away. I remember like fucking just like hobbling out the door to the corner trying not to shit myself the entire time. Getting the money to do it, I was like shaking too much to even fucking like inject myself with that shit. And that was back when it was like actually made by like fucking like massive fucking gangs and shit, or made in labs to look like heroin. Now it's made by addicts, and it's fucking analogs, like I said. But yeah, let's wrap this up.
Grams is an overdose, like you could die. Granted, I don't think anyone can 50 to 100 grams a day. And I just favor things like Kratom because it's so cheap, cheap. You can get like a kilo of it for under $100.
Life,
of course, the better quality vendors are going to charge more, and a kilo hopefully will last you a long freaking time. But I've heard some horror stories of people taking 50 to 100 grams a day. And just to put this in perspective,
I took 50 when I had the withdrawal. Not all at once. I took, I think, 30 first. Puked. Felt terrible. Took another 20. Puked. Felt terrible. It sucked. I think a lot of this is him self-assuring his own addictive tendencies, and going, hey, I'm one of that opioid addicted crowd now, which, yeah, you are an addict. Congrats, I guess. Trust me, you're going to find out pretty quick. It's not all it's cracked out to be. I mean, you think you would have found out by now because, if you followed his channel, you've seen that, like, he has recorded a lot of the turmoil that his Kratom addiction has caused him. And I believe he's also addicted to testosterone. He used to say, and this shows that, like, he does lie a lot, that it was his Kratom addiction that gave him an estrogen imbalance and or an estrogen spike, and he was prescribed testosterone, and then he went out and just said that wasn't true. And he, like, I remember he uploaded a video of, oh, I'm injecting testosterone into my ass. Just kidding, it's a fake needle. And then he was like, no, it was a real needle, like a couple videos later. he is not exactly a credible source, but again, like, he is an addict at this point, and you know, we will do anything to make ourselves feel better about the places we're in, the things we have done, the things we can't repair, the things we can't take back, the people we've hurt who will never talk to us again. This is why I haven't wanted to make a video on him, but because I feel like it would just be like, you know, hurting someone who's in a state of denial, and has, in the comments section, what I see is an echo chamber of fans mirroring what he says, mirroring what he wants to hear, I should say, giving him excuses when, you know, as an addict, you're really, like, it takes being your own worst enemy to a whole new level, because you, like, for me, it was always, I think I feel a migraine coming on, I need to use some heroin. So I just, like, bullshit myself into believing I had migraines to use heroin. I can only imagine what it's like to have thousands of people justifying your behavior for you. And I can see why once your familial comfort is fucked off because you burned those bridges, and you have this persona left that makes you mad moolah fucking on the internet, and that makes your addiction seem not as bad as it would otherwise seem. I can see why he has gotten to the place he has. Like, honestly, his rock bottom does not look like the rock bottoms I got to know. Like, I described it as rock bottom was like a trampoline for me, and I just was like doing off that shit. Like, now for years I was sleeping on the streets. I couldn't even afford heroin, so I would steal fucking liquor from government liquor stores, and I would just fucking like pound a fifth of like bourbon so I could just sleep through the cold. I'm surprised I didn't end up dead doing that. So like, yeah, you know, he's got that YouTube money. I didn't have it, so I didn't have that money. So there was a lot of time where I couldn't afford to fix, and again, I wasn't going to steal from girlfriends or friends or whatever. So I oftentimes was just like going through stretches of Suboxone or methadone.
If I drink 8 grams at once, I will puke. So I have no idea how there's people out there drinking 50 grams at once. In fact, some people say 30 grams is an overdose, like you could die. Granted, I don't think anyone has died from it, because what'll happen is you'll just puke your guts out for hours or days. But yeah, people take a disgusting high amounts, and the only risk with...
Okay, so like after I knew I took way too much the first time I did it, but I had another 50 grams left, and I took it in 5 incremental doses of 10 milligrams. Weighed out. I knew the amount, a little bit of lemon juice, the day after, and I did hydros during the day, spiked a couple hydros, just enough to keep me out of withdrawal, like didn't feel the euphoria or anything, and I was like, okay, we could give this another try. Puke, and I just fucking gave the last of it to a friend. I was just like, fuck this is not for me. Maybe it is for some people, but like the vast majority of people I've spoken to, friends I have who work at places that sell Kratom because it's legal here, they all fucking hate it. Like they kind of will recommend it to addicts sometimes, but they'll also be like, there's like, it kind of works for some people, but it's few and far between, and the efficacy is like, it seems very limited. But again, this is him self-assuring his own.
Down from, something like methadone or oxycodone to Kratom is now you're going to be addicted to Kratom. So if you really...
Okay, methadone and oxycodone are way stronger than Kratom. Methadone, again, full agonist, walls off your pain receptors. That's why I think I have nerve pain everywhere, because my pain receptors were walled the fuck off while the rest of my brain was developing in puberty. it's a strong shit. It's meant to, like, after a while, like, I would shoot, like, a point or two of heroin, and I wouldn't even feel it. Like, that's kind of what it does, is it's like, it makes the point of using futile. Then fentanyl came along, and fentanyl is strong enough to punch through that wall a little bit, and can still get you high on it, if you're on methadone or Suboxone. Again, the only reason I used it, deliberately, but I mean, I did, you know, fucking accidentally take it many, many times when I was much more reckless and, you know, didn't ritualistically get my shit tested, or ritualistically is the wrong word, sounds kind of weird, routinely get my shit tested. And the last shit I got tested was, I thought 4-ACO DMT, turned out to be 5-MeO DMT, so I was like, whew, close one, but you know, needless to say, I haven't needed to test like hard drugs for a long time because I have no fucking desire to use them. But yeah, he's just like kind of, now this video, it just seems like it was fucking all a cumulative justification for using his drug choice. And now I feel bad again. But at the same time, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I'm not going to say he's selfish for doing that. He's just in an addictive mind space. Like, that's kind of what happens. It's sad, but it's true. You know, you want your behavior adjudicated. You want to feel like you're not some alienated, like, stigmatized, just blight on society. Like, that's how you feel when you're fucking an addict. Like, I used to say it was like being a pimple on the ass of humanity. But yeah, no, he's like, okay, and then he ends it with a sponsor.
Energy drink is strong as all hell, and I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute, and I feel like I took something stronger than an energy drink. So this is a great advertisement.
Okay, so he's plugging fucking, like, stupidly strong caffeinated energy drinks that are probably, just an assumption on my part, probably made via slave labor in really sketchy places that have very loose laws on fucking, like, what you can put in an energy drink, like caffeine amounts and other shit. But yeah, so overall, there was a lot of really bad moments in that. Can we agree on that? I know this was a long video to cover a 13-minute video by him, but, like, again, I lamentingly make this because I don't want to fucking take jabs at this dude, because, yeah, like, the thing is, you, as an addict, you either kind of have to figure it out on your own with the help of people around you, if they're willing to help you. I didn't have anyone around me except for my parents, because I deliberately, like, isolated myself from my friends because I saw how my ex normalized me to heroin use, to needles specifically, and then my other friends, for the most part, just were like real shitty to me, like, you know, one cracked a vase upside my head as I was walking away from him because he was mad at me for using fentanyl, and then punched me in the head a bunch of times, which, yeah, I started bleeding out my ears, and I split his scalp open, and yeah, no remorse for that one. Fuck you, dude. If you see this video, you know who you are. I've seen you shit post on my videos before. You're a piece of shit, and hey, guess what? You said I'd be dead with a needle in my arm by now. Here I am. 3 college courses stronger. If he's watching, there's nothing I could do to convince this woman-abusing sociopath to fucking believe that I'm anything but the scum of the fucking earth because he likes to project shit about his own dad's tragic fucking demise, which is tragic because, you know, he was like a second father to me. But yeah, here's what it is. I know so many people who have died from fentanyl or fentanyl analogs that now it's like a PTSD response. I hear every week or 2 weeks, oh, this person died that I knew to varying degrees. Now, another one bites the dust. If I let everyone affect me, I would be like some people I know who are like guilt-ridden. And, us humans, we like closure, and people die immediately and of stupid shit like drugs. Like, it is very hard to find a sense of like substantial closure. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So, people, family members and stuff usually will project their feelings of frustration, angst, all that onto other people. And because, like, in this particular case, me and the dad, like, actually, we never used hard drugs together. We smoked weed together, but, like, we bonded on our mutual addictions. He was one of those dudes who's from, the generation where the crack epidemic was something he got caught up in. And then, he did the whole using heroin to come down, and then fentanyl to come down, and then escalated from there, and so on and so forth. But, yeah. The only advice I can leave you with is get a fucking professional opinion. Like, seriously. Like, if you do know what you're doing, if you are using like pure fentanyl, which I highly doubt is the fucking case, and if you are, like, be careful, because again, microdose, like hundreds of micrograms, is, sorry, I don't know why I said microdose, hundreds of micrograms is like, a starter dose, basically. So just be very careful if you're using pure fentanyl, or if you're like using oxys or whatever, which I think are pretty fucking hard to get now. Like, yeah, talk to a fucking professional if you're physically addicted. And if you're physically addicted, you know it. There's no, like, it's not like he said, like, instant fucking withdrawal. Like, in the article he seemed to read from verbatim, it says precipitated withdrawal puts you instantly into withdrawal, because it does, pretty much. With Suboxone, it felt like within 15 minutes I went from feeling normal, or, well, not normal, but like going through a little bit of withdrawal to, like, fucking hell froze over. And I was going for a fucking trip to the South Pole. Satan, South Pole. Sorry, I'm getting past the 2-hour mark and, like, restless. Anyways, I've covered most points. All I can recommend is that, like, once you are off of those drugs, if you're not, like, even if you're on a maintenance opioid or anything, all I would recommend is CBD and pot. If pot is something that your system will agree with, mainly your chemistry, like hereditary predispositions to psychotic disorders. I've said this 1,000 times, but it's important. When I was forced into the psych ward, there were people being wheeled in all the time who went into psychosis after taking a bomb hit because they had, like, very bad bipolar. At the same time, I know people with like BPD, bipolar 2, who, like, would not be able to, I think, function without weed. So, like, it really depends on the person. So I'm not putting, like, a general fucking piece of advice out there. There are things you can do to comfort yourself. Like, when I was going on to transitioning from the morphine to the Suboxone, and I knew, just like intuitively, I was going to go into precipitated withdrawal. I fucking knew it, and it happened like 5 times. It was an agonizing, really, really rocky, especially for, like, clinicians carrying this out. Like, they're supposed to be, like, surgical. These are, like, specialists. But yeah, it was a complete clusterfuck. I got a fucking 2 cartons of cigarettes, a fuckload of candy, because you get cravings when you're going through withdrawal. Candy, cigarettes helps. Long term, probably would kill you faster than, if you were given a steady supply of pure fucking fentanyl for the rest of your life. but those things help with cravings when you're in withdrawal. But yeah, I'll put the cows, which is what they use to gauge withdrawal, as I said, but mainly for the purpose of transitioning someone onto Suboxone, because like that article said, it is crucial that you are in moderate to severe withdrawal to go on Suboxone. Like, that is my heavy criticism. And, you know, just trailing behind that a little bit is the Kratom one. That is just beyond fucking stupid. It's just self-serving, and, like, I keep wanting to say selfish, but I'm, like, having to remind myself this guy is, like, experiencing kind of his own cognitive dissonance. I think that's the only way I can excuse this shit, because, yeah, maybe he genuinely believes he's putting out good information. I'm fucked if I know, because how he could get so many things wrong here is beyond me. It's like almost inexcusable. Like, with his fan base, like the thing is, he's put out misinformation, in my opinion, about psychedelics, but in my opinion, psychedelics are subjective, so I'm, like, more willing to give that a pass. And then again, because of his vulnerable state over the last while, I've bitched about him a lot, more so just the content of his videos, and what I thought was bad behavior he was promoting to his audience. Like, I bitched about that in private to people who, you know, support this channel, who are cool peeps. And by the way, you know, I'm always willing to talk to anyone. By the way, guys, my signal is not working for some reason, so if you tried to message me and I haven't messaged you back, I apologize. I am locked out of my one email that I've given you guys who I correspond with, and if I can't get into it, I'll mention in the next video that, like, you know, if you want to contact me, just leave a comment. I'll just put up my other email and then just take it up once you got it, sort of thing, if I can't get my signal working again. Yeah, anyways, fuck this video. It's full of horse shit. Don't even watch it. It's like him, it's kind of funny watching him and his bro ass fucking buddy who I've scrolled through his YouTube page, that Jack dude or whatever, who is just chugging that fucking cup of Kratom right beside the dude who's supposed to be like deathly fucking addicted to this stuff. When they were on is it Abbott in Hastings, I think, an area where I've been jumped so many times. I've had so many death-defying fucking things happen to me in that area because, again, homeless addict, and I'd spend most of the day up the street where people would sell pills, and I would, like, trades, try to make money for fucking heroin. These guys were fucking scary. I don't blame them. It's a scary-ass area. It's a scary-ass area. I walk through there every fucking day, and like, to go get weed, and it reminds me of, like, oh boy, I'm glad I didn't go down this road and, you know, become a fentanyl addict, fucking, now analog, whatever, fucking addict. It's rough as fuck, but why I'm bringing it up is it diffuses the whole, oh, I'm an opioid addict from Vancouver, which is, like, just got the worst drug problem in North America. Let me just double check, because I may be wrong on that. It's the most in Canada, downtown east side, yeah, that's where I grew up, basically. Yeah, Google's not telling me about North America, it's just saying that it's the most in Canada. I'm gonna say the West, see if that makes any difference. Like, it's bad fucking here. Yeah, saying, Vice is saying ground zero, like, you know, they're like fucking shooting galleries all over the place. Government sanctioned shooting galleries. I actually still have handles. I could go to those places any day I wanted to with anything and shoot up. Just go, hey. I'm not going to say my handle because I don't want people fucking misusing it. It's a Warren Zevon song, so that doesn't really narrow it down. But if you know Warren Zevon, you probably have some idea of what the song title is. Anyways, people found it funny who work there. The people who work there, like, serious kudos to them. Like, I had a lot of, I still have friends who work there. It's yeah, like and these are mostly people who are like ex-addicts and like they fucking witnessed some serious shit there. Like at Insight primarily, that's the main one. But yeah, these places are fucking crazy, dude. It's like a war zone. It seriously is. Except instead of like the battle being overt with bullets flying back and forth, it's, you know, you're dodging clouds of meth and fentanyl and fucking having to ask yourself if that person over there fucking needs an naloxone shot or, you know. It's and by the way, please don't just shoot someone up with naloxone. Like, if you see someone who is like unresponsive, overdosing, fucking, which, you know, going back to a point he made that was like a bit of a myth. It was something that's more true when heroin was like the drug of choice for addicts when it came to opiates. Like, it used to be that they would like go through treatment and then they'd relapse during a high dose and overdose. But I think that even back then it's still more of a myth than anything. I can't think of any real examples of that, and I know a lot of people who have died from overdoses. Every time I've heard of a relapse, though, it's like they start at like a low amount, and then, because the thing is, with opiates, you can always just do more. And typically users, no matter how far gone, even if they're like full-on sociopaths, they may be, like, they are still, like, they still have some semblance of self-preservation and don't want to just fucking kill themselves, especially straight out of the gate overcoming something like that, because, you know, it's, relapsing is a hard thing. Like, it's like, when you have gone through all this effort and whatnot to change, and like, you've gone through hell, fucking, you know, sweating bullets, like, to fucking have that all come crumbling down because these intuitive, like essentially programmings that, like, opioids do to your brain, that makes you think it's like an evolutionary fucking, like, necessity to have this stuff or you're going to die, because it simulates the feeling of, like, near death. But, you know, the only people I know of who have died from just opioid withdrawal, or, well, opiates in this case, because it was heroin, it was two women, who were locked up in, like, a drunk tank all New Year's weekend, and the cops, like, weren't giving them water and food. They were, like, putting them, like, outside the door. They were in such bad withdrawal, they were, like, curled up in a fetal position, just shaking, and they couldn't hydrate, and they died from dehydration. But like, typically opioid withdrawal, unless maybe you're immunocompromised, I'm not saying test this theory at all. You know, like you said, cold turkey, not a good idea. Like, you'll probably at the best sustain a little bit of brain damage from that. I've been forced into having to do it many times, and it's yeah, it's definitely left a fucking impact on me, a lasting impact. But yeah, anyways, this has been a long video, and I just want to let you guys know that I have not just been doing video silence, because I have tried really hard to make, like, lengthy, well-researched, like, regimented videos with, like, a trajectory you can follow and stuff, but just something goes wrong in the last 5 minutes after like nearly 2 hours where I'm wrapping it up. So frustrating. And I will get to that soon enough, but I also want to tell you right now that I'm just gonna be straight up, man. Like I'm other than microdosing, not gonna be doing psychedelics for a while, just because like I have anhedonia, so I don't feel pleasure, so I would be wasting psychedelics, and so I'm not gonna be talking about them. But like I still like to fucking trip out and shit, so I make my weed so fucking strong that I'm hallucinating by the time I'm done smoking. So you know, if you come here to see drug shit, that is going to be the only drug shit, along with me chain smoking, because that's what I do in videos, because when I talk I get anxious and I like to smoke. It's a pacifying effect. A little pacifier. A little cancerous pacifier. Anyways, I had to respond to this because I just, like, even though I know no one's gonna hear this from his audience, maybe a few people, and if they do, they're probably gonna be like, oh, well, you just don't like him, fuck you. Again, I am not fucking a practitioner. I've done naloxone training enough times to be a certified trainer myself. I administered naloxone twice. In about 10 other cases, I was able to resuscitate people who are about to be naloxoned by essentially just like grabbing them and shaking them, like fucking, like not like full on sweat, like fucking hauling back and smacking them, but like little silly slaps to wake them the fuck up so they don't die. And then, you know, like having to stimulate them so they stay awake for the next 10 minutes until they come out of that deep respiratory depression. Because naloxone will give them immediate precipitated withdrawal, and it will be horrible. So if you have to do it, call an ambulance too, because they are going to need professional care, because that is the actual situations. Just recapping here, because this is important, I think. Even if you think, you know, addicts are hopeless causes, which, you know, I would agree with you in a lot of cases. It's sad, but it's true. But at the same time, you know, I just me, I can't just like watch someone die. I'm sorry, that's just me. So yeah, the instances similar to what he was talking about, but what he was talking about, as I said, is more of a myth with the whole tolerance thing. Well, naloxone immediately, by kicking everything off the receptors, like really lowers your tolerance. And so they'll go out and be like, I'm in fucking the worst withdrawal I've ever experienced. I need to use not just my regular dose with no tolerance, which they don't know. Most people who are taught naloxone are not taught this. And I actually chastise the instructors who haven't mentioned this, because it is fucking important. Because, you know, you don't want to just like, you know, make it so this person's just going to OD twice as hard in like 12 hours. Because they're going to want to use more than they usually do, because they're going to think this withdrawal is so bad, I need more to make it stop. And then they are like, naloxone might not even be able to help them at that point. As I said, like, the times I've had to use it, I've had to use like a couple vials at least. And this isn't the like spray at the nose shit. I mean like full on, like I had to pull their pants down, fucking jab it into their leg and do CPR on them to like help them fucking breathe. Not that I was like putting my mouth on them, like these guys, you know, who like sometimes had like fucking vomit and shit, like drool just coming out of there. Yeah. But yeah, you know, I would wait until the ambulance would get there and everything as they're starting to come to from the naloxone. But yeah, if you ever want me to do a video on naloxone training, I can. Very, very simple. Like it's a no-brainer. Just the thing that most people don't know is that, and that is so crucial. Anyways, that's it. This is being a fucking stupidly long video. I've got shit I gotta do today. I've got a fucking life. I need a fucking joint, a cigarette, and a coffee, and get going. Okay, bye. Fucking love you, and I will fucking have some more videos out soon. Adam, if you ever do see this, fucking, your fans see this, dude, I'm really, like, I tried to make a case for why I'm not ripping on you, but, like now you're treading into territory that has led to so many fucking insanely preventable deaths, and the advice you are giving is stuff that will lead to more death if followed to the letter. I'm not being hyperbolic in the slightest when saying that. Like, this is about as serious as my face gets. Like, okay? Constructive criticism so other people don't die. Okay? Okay. Anyways, those of you who did watch, and, you know, if you have any criticism to lob my way, go for it. Just, you know, instead of dropping an insult, drop an actual criticism so we can have a back and forth, you know? Yeah, I mean, I have fucking my own problems, and it took me a long time to come to realizations that led to me getting away from that life, because you get really ensnared in it. And again, it took me a long time to be able to, like, responsibly substitute other drugs for what I was trying to treat, which is my chronic nerve pain, my treatment-resistant major depressive, and all the other stuff, which is why I got myself hooked on benzos again, as I said, but otherwise, like, I'm not even using psychedelics right now, because I love psychedelics. They help my depression so much if I take a macro dose, but it's just going to be very unpredictable because of the benzo withdrawal making my, like, system wonky, and the anhedonia, which is a side effect of it, I've experienced to lesser extents just from having treatment-resistant major depressive disorder. It just, like, for me to like find myself getting bored in, like, high-dose DMT hyperspace, like, yeah, it's just a waste. It's just a waste. Sorry. But hey, if you wanna come watch me fucking smoke weed and talk about some other topics that are neat and trippy that I won't get into, because if I do, I will spend the next 20 minutes talking about the videos I've tried to make and the topics. But you'll see. So stay tuned, and yeah, super long video. Apologies for that, but just so much to be said on this. Okay?